WeatherScope is sponsored by the all-new Wide Track Grand Prix by Pontiac. Wider is better.
This is a special edition of WeatherScope.
And quite a severe weather outbreak. Speak, and we haven't even seen what I would think would be the worst part of this line yet. And believe it or not, if that's the case, we've already heard reports of winds of 70 to 100 miles an hour all the way from Lufkin, Texas, on into northeast Louisiana now, where several counties are under severe thunderstorm warnings for winds of 70 to 100 miles an hour. And this is just, well, for lack of a better word, an added bonus as a part of the storm system. And really, we haven't seen the energy that we think is going to produce the tornadoes yet. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. But we can go all the way back south to San Antonio to find what this storm has done. Let's go ahead and take you to Medina County earlier this morning as the sun came up. You can see the results of a couple of severe weather episodes. They actually had baseball-sized hail at 7:05 a.m. and then at 7:45 again, 3/4 inch diameter hail, which covered the ground. And yeah, a little wind obviously accompanied that, enough to turn that truck over, as well as also crash that sign down. So familiar sights across Texas today into the Houston area, some wind damage. Lufkin, as I mentioned, 75 miles an hour, and that line really exploded this afternoon, Tom, and that's been the main show.
Right, an intense squall line that came out of Texas into Louisiana. This is a very dangerous weather system. The consequences could be great across the southeast. It's a complex system. There's aspects of it that we're looking at that aren't very familiar to us.
Especially in early February.
Right, for this time of year. And everything's invigorated, the jet stream, because of El Nino. And it's trying to bring this all together and come out with the forecast is difficult, but this situation is very, very precarious.
All right, well, let's go ahead and take a look at it and try and make some sense out of it. And you can see just how quickly here, we had a little 8-hour loop here, and you can see how, or 12-hour loop, you can see how quickly this thing's wrapped up into a comma shape, which shows us the mid-level jet is really punching into this line, and that's what we've seen today, really. The mid-level winds of 70 to 100 knots have translated down to the surface across northeast Texas into northern Louisiana.
Right, and the mid-level jet stream just diving down, taking some of the precipitation away here, but punching in the drier air and really fueling this intense squall line that we've seen in Louisiana. And then we have a big flow. You can see some of the clouds running up here with strong low-level winds ahead of it coming out of the south and southeast. And then, if that isn't enough, we have another energy in the upper atmosphere that hasn't even caught up with the main system yet, which you rarely see this far east. So lots going on, Jim.
Amazingly enough, even on the infrared satellite imagery, and I'm going to colorize these tops for you in just a second, you can see where we have the enhancement, where we have some of the greatest rising air motion right now, and that is starting to move into southern Arkansas.
Right, southern Arkansas, northern Louisiana, and of course the tornado watches are out. So Arkansas and Louisiana will worry about the next few hours. Then later this evening, Mississippi under the gun. And then as we get past midnight toward morning, we'll worry a lot about Alabama and eventually on in toward Georgia and the Florida Panhandle.
Now, in northern Alabama and northern Georgia this afternoon, dew points are in the upper 30s. Is it possible to resaturate the air enough so that we get an instability great for severe weather?
Well, Jim, I think you're talking about, say, Atlanta, Georgia, for example, where the dew point's only around 40. It's a big race between how fast the atmosphere can moisten up in order to bring severe weather that far east. It's going to be a close call in the morning. Most of the severe weather will probably be to the south of Birmingham and Atlanta, but we can't totally rule out some severe thunderstorms even in those areas, and a big threat of tornadoes tonight throughout the southeast.
This is kind of a signature here, kind of gives, this is the leading edge of definitely some milder or warmer air coming on northward, and that looks like it's not going to stop. But here's the intense squall line, folks, and again, this northern periphery as it moves through northeast Louisiana. Several counties under severe thunderstorm warnings: Richland, Morehouse, or excuse me, parishes, Franklin, Union, all these areas expecting winds of 70 to 80 miles an hour, and also up into Union, Arkansas. There is now a Union County, Arkansas, I should say, a severe thunderstorm warning. So that is just going to continue to move on northward.
Well, a lot of energy here in a small, like, mini system within the actual low pressure area, plus the line itself is moving at 60 miles per hour. There's going to be an awful lot of wind damage just from the line alone, even without tornadoes, which we'll be destined to get ahead of this in Alabama and Mississippi later this evening.
All right, thank you very much, Tom Moore. And again, folks, once these pictures come out, I think you're going to see just how intense this line was in northern Louisiana today. If your cable goes out, I strongly urge you to if you still have a telephone line available, get on the computer, weather.com, get the latest watches and warnings, try and follow the line and its progression onto the east. We'll keep you posted as to where this is going. Right now, let's find out what's happening with our new West Coast storm with Jill.
Okay, thanks, Jim. It should be a mild, sunny day in the northeast. We'll take a look at that in a moment. But that is certainly not the case in the west, where heavy rain and wind and some mountain snow may be affecting you. The rain was light in Seattle today. Many of you had your umbrellas ready to go as you walked outside. Had to bundle up a little bit. Temperatures in the mid-40s. Showers aren't going.
This special edition of WeatherScope is sponsored by State Farm Insurance. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
This is a special edition of WeatherScope.
And a busy night here at the Weather Channel as we continue to watch severe thunderstorms push across southeastern Arkansas, western Mississippi now, as several warnings have come out. If you live in Jackson, Mississippi, or really all along the river, you are more than likely under a gun and going to see 50 to perhaps 70-mile-per-hour winds as this intense squall line is holding together tonight and pushing onto the east. And I guess that's what I want to talk about, the fact that this line is going to hold together and push onto the east. Several reports have come in now out of Shreveport as to estimated damage this afternoon between 12:40 and 4:25 p.m. Winds of 60 to 75 miles per hour and a lot of damage reported to trees and also power lines. So really just a miserable time, and I'm sure we will see some pretty miserable pictures before things are all said and done. Let me show you what it was like to Houston today, and this is reportedly with winds of 40 to 60 miles an hour. The most intense part of this line was actually north of Houston. And look at this. I mean, if this isn't bad enough here, thunderstorms leaving a tremendous amount of debris. You see limbs down, you see structural damage as evidenced here, and obviously cleanup getting underway quite quickly. And now that the sun is starting to fade, of course, I mean, that's a large tree limb right there. No doubt it took 40 to 60 to bring that one down across parts of Harris County. So a rough period between 12:30 and 2:30 this afternoon for the folks in Houston, Texas. Let's go ahead and take a look at our line and our storm situation. And really this low is the one that we're going to watch develop even more so and push on off to the northeast in time. But what it's doing is just bringing in a tremendous amount of Gulf air from the low levels. And you can even see the clouds. You see how they're moving in a clockwise fashion over Florida, then kind of heading into the squall line. So this is the feeder area coming in at about 50 to 70 knots at the lowest 2,000 feet. And then we get up into the mid-levels, and you can see what's happening here. We got a tremendous jet which cut across Louisiana today at 70 to 100 knots. So that wind direction change with height allowed us to get very, very unstable and just keep the squall line going. Now look at how quick this line punched across northern Louisiana. Not only did the line move at 60 miles an hour, but as you saw from the reports, 60 to 75 mile per hour winds common, a tremendous amount of structural damage, tree damage, power lines and whatnot across northeastern Louisiana, all the way back into Lufkin, Texas, where they gusted to 75 miles an hour, not to mention about 4 to 5 inches of rain just north and west of Shreveport. Tornado watches through late this evening, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Arkansas. There's little doubt that we will continue to see them advance east as the squall line does so itself this evening. And you can see it firsthand here as we take a look at the radar to Jackson, Mississippi. What you're looking at in the foreground is the actual low-level jet with moisture and thunderstorms developing along it. Here's the main squall line back and through here, which is not broken. It's holding together very well. And now the calm ahead, which is beginning to weaken a little bit. Winds not as strong with this calm ahead as they were earlier, obviously with 70 to 100 mile per hour winds, but still winds are in excess of 50 to 60 miles an hour. As a matter of fact, just last hour, Monroe, Louisiana gusted to 60 miles per hour. Here's the Jackson, Mississippi Doppler radar site. Of course, you look west along the Mississippi River. Now that the line is beginning to move east across the river, that's why all the warnings are starting to come up for 50 to 70 mile per hour winds. So very similar to what we dealt with earlier today in the Houston area. Here's the southern end of the line stretching down through Louisiana. This is the Doppler radar site of Lake Charles. Here's Louisiana, Texas being here, Louisiana, and you can see how the line is just continuing to move on off to the east. And we'll keep an eye on this intersection between the low-level jet and the actual squall line, as that tends to at times energize the storm. So if you live in the southern parishes of Louisiana, that's why you continue to see warnings, like for example Lafayette Parish under the gun with a severe thunderstorm warning. Now there's little doubt this line's going to continue tonight and stay strong and produce winds, damaging winds perhaps, and even the potential for tornadoes as some upper level energy in Texas right now catches up with the southern end of that line. So the worst potential for tornadoes may actually come after the sun goes down tonight. A busy night. Keep it tuned to the Weather Channel. If your cable goes out, you still got power, you still got a phone line, and you don't have too much lightning outside, hook yourself up with weather.com to keep track of the latest watches and also warnings. And I, again, strongly urge you to monitor this line as it heads to the east. That's going fine with that new Pacific storm has in store for us, as Mike Bono gives us the details.
That's right, Jim. Some pretty nice weather, pretty decent weather in the eastern United States. A little bit questionable in the upper Midwest, but the west, we've got heavy rain, high winds, and mountain snows once again. In Seattle today, the rain was mostly light. Many of you had your umbrellas ready to go as you walk outside, as you often need to do this time of the year. But some folks bundling up if they were smart, because the temperature was only in the middle 40s. Showers aren't going anyway.
This edition of WeatherScope is sponsored by Midas Auto Systems experts. What can we do for you today?
This is a special edition of WeatherScope.
Thanks for joining us here at the Weather Channel. I'm Kristina Abernathy. We're watching severe weather tonight. We have the potential for strong winds, even tornadoes, and we've already had a lot of damage in parts of Texas and Louisiana, and we don't see any signs of these storms letting up as the squall line moves across the region. Let's take a look at some of the damage earlier today in Houston. We had some rough weather indeed. This was the damage left behind after a line of severe thunderstorms passed through Houston, Texas today. As you can see, many roofs were torn apart. Large tree branches also caused damage. Both airports reported wind gusts of 40 miles per hour. More showers are on the way for the area. That line of heavy thunderstorms roared through the Shreveport area right around rush hour this afternoon. Heavy downpours and winds gusting up to 70 miles per hour made driving hazardous. From 1 to 2 inches of rain fell during the storm, causing some serious flooding problems for some areas. As you can see, this man is in a difficult situation, so a lot of heavy rain to go along with the severe weather. Well, here's the situation right now. The culprit, this area of low pressure, which is giving you a good bit of wet weather, as we just saw, and also some storminess, especially here through Louisiana and Texas, and now especially into Louisiana. We see quite a line of storms moving through the region, and we're joined now by senior meteorologist Tom Moore. And Tom, a real rough situation here, and it looks like it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
Right. This is a very energetic, vigorous storm system, and it's going to parade across the southeast overnight from Louisiana through Mississippi, Alabama, into Georgia and the Florida Panhandle by tomorrow morning.
As we look at the satellite view, perhaps you can tell us what all is involved with this threat for severe weather and the potential also for tornadoes.
Right. We had a lot of energy come out of the southwest, and it formed an area of low pressure near the Gulf of Mexico, and that's moving up to the northeast. We had a punch of dry air from winds aloft coming out into the backside of the system, and a lot of moisture rotating into the front side of the system. So we have various winds at different levels, and even some more energy in the upper atmosphere coming on into the system. So it's very, very invigorated. Plus we have a jet stream to the south, so it's packing a punch. A lot of thunderstorms. A squall line developed here in Louisiana and is moving into Mississippi right now, and it's produced a lot of damaging winds. Not many tornadoes yet, but certainly there is a threat of tornadoes throughout much of the southeast tonight.
As a matter of fact, the threat of severe weather exists right in this area from Mississippi and Alabama into northern Florida and southern Georgia, and we do have several watches in effect. Tornado watches here for Mississippi and on into Louisiana. As we look at our radar picture here, quite a squall line moving through southern Louisiana.
Well, it's quite a squall line, and it's moving very, very quickly. So we have a lot of winds generated here. Nacogdoches Parish down to the south of Shreveport, 70% of that parish without power. Wind gusts 80 miles per hour plus there. Looks like the Greenwood area, Mississippi, under the gun, possible tornado there, at least by Doppler radar. And it looks like Jackson, Mississippi, about to get some very vicious thunderstorms. New Orleans, some thunderstorms in the area, and that squall line, which looks like it's invigorated lately, will get some more thunderstorms in the next, say, 2 to 3 hours. All this will translate to the east overnight, so a long night ahead of severe weather.
A closer look at New Orleans. Again, it's just a matter of time. A few storms just to the west of New Orleans, but that with much worse weather is off to the west.
Right, we had a line of thunderstorms here that have weakened a bit, came through Baton Rouge and produced 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts. And coming into Baton Rouge now, another more vigorous line of thunderstorms with even stronger winds than that. But this whole area right around the Mississippi River down toward the New Orleans area, those are the regions that are under the gun for the next few hours. But notice how far south the line of thunderstorms extend into the Gulf as low pressure lifts to the northeast. This poses a big problem, say midnight and beyond, for Gulfport and Mobile and those areas along the Gulf Coast.
All right, Tom, thanks a lot for that information. Of course, we'll keep everyone updated as we head through the night, back in half an hour. But we want to take a look now at what's going on in the western U.S. Yet another system moving in, and for that we head back to the studio with Warren.
Okay, thanks very much, Kristina. We do still have a lot to talk about here at the Weather Channel.
Severe storms are battering parts of the southeast tonight. Thanks for joining us here at the Weather Channel. I'm Kristina Abernathy. We have the threat of severe weather. As a matter of fact, tornado watch in effect. We'll take a closer look at that first. Some damage earlier today in Houston. A rough weather day for you. The severe weather tore across the Houston area early in the afternoon. Powerful winds left their mark, tearing roofs from buildings and bringing down trees. The two major airports in Houston reported wind gusts of 40 miles per hour. So here's the area that we're watching. We've got our area of low pressure here. We've got moisture coming in from the Gulf of Mexico, and that is fueling a pretty large area of rain here, and also storms, some of which have been and can continue to be severe here, especially into right now Louisiana and into Mississippi. Eventually we will see that threat of severe weather spreading on eastward. And I'm joined now by senior meteorologist Tom Moore. And Tom, this is a pretty potent system here, a lot of rough weather with it.
It's very reminiscent of a springtime system. The seasons seem to be all ajar this year anyway, with not a lot of cold air to the north. But this is a very powerful system, a strong squall line or a line of intense thunderstorms, which has been racing eastward now through Mississippi and will eventually get over toward Georgia and the Florida Panhandle by morning.
A look at our satellite view shows the area that's being affected. What's involved with this? Why so much rough weather here?
Well, we have a very strong energy in the upper atmosphere, which we'll talk about in the El Nino focus, but a strong jet stream to the south, and in the mid-levels of the atmosphere, a punch of dry air, which helps to destabilize the atmosphere aloft, allows for evaporation and cooling. And then ahead of the system, some very warm, moist air, as you pointed out, Kristina, coming up from the Gulf of Mexico, which, by the way, is much warmer than it should be for this time of year because no cold air has come down to cool it off. So, in other words, the atmosphere is very invigorated, much more so than it would ordinarily be for this time of year.
We have the threat for severe weather here tonight. Of course, right now what we're focusing in on is what's going on here in Louisiana and Mississippi, but eventually that threat of severe weather spreading eastward. And these storms have a history of producing a lot of wind damage. We've had trees down, power lines down, roofs off of houses, and we do have a tornado watch in effect as well for a good chunk of Mississippi and on into Louisiana. Now, as we look at the radar, this is a pretty nasty looking line of storms moving here through Louisiana.
Yeah, there seems to be a little bit of an interruption in the line on central Mississippi, but coming around the area of low pressure, very strong thunderstorms in northern Mississippi, kind of maybe flirting with the southern portion of the Memphis metro area. And then we pick up the Squall line again just west of New Orleans. Looks like New Orleans is going to see some rough weather, say in about an hour or so.
And a close-up view gives you just a better idea of what's going on here. Of course, Baton Rouge had some nasty storms, and that line headed for New Orleans.
Right. Actually, there was more of a line in this that came through Baton Rouge earlier, and now this lighted thunderstorm is coming on through. And more to come, and this is just going to slide right along the Gulf Coast as we move past the midnight hour.
As we head a little farther to the north, you can see the area of wet weather here, and eventually we're going to see the system spreading that rain onto the north as well. Who else is going to be impacted by this system?
Well, you can see the rain kind of wrapping around the area of low pressure. A lot of flooding rains in Arkansas, and all this rain is going to spread quickly to the north up through the Ohio Valley. So those of you in Illinois, Indiana, even western Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, you'll all be inundated with this rain by morning. And some of that rain will change to wet snow in parts of Michigan, maybe even into the Chicago area by tomorrow afternoon.
All right, Tom, thanks a lot for that information. And of course, we'll be back in just a few minutes to take a look at how this may be related to El Nino, so stay tuned for that. But for now, we want to head back to the studio. There's some interesting weather in the western U.S., and for that, we head to Jeff Morrow.
All right, thanks, Kristina. Really, most of the nation enjoyed another fairly quiet weather day today. However, you were right, another wet storm system is harassing the Pacific Northwest and parts of California again. Gray skies framed Seattle's Space Needle today as the wet weather moved into the region. The rain has been fairly light in Seattle, but many of you had your umbrellas out. Pretty good deal there. It's been chilly in the Seattle area with temperatures only in the mid-40s. Let's put our satellite radar composite on into motion. And this system definitely not one of the stronger ones that has impacted the West Coast in recent days. But nonetheless, additional rain, particularly here for California, is very unwelcome. Everything's saturated. Some of the floodwaters have yet to recede and may take quite some time doing that. So additional rain like this is not good news. Difference with this system is the main energy way up here to the north, not really rotating into California or even sideswiping it so much as it is moving to the north. So once this moves in, I think that's going to be it for maybe another day or so. But already we can start to see some high cloudiness sifting into the western part of your frame there, the left-hand part of your television set, and that is the beginnings of our next system already. So no rest for the weary, at least no extended rest. Again, around Seattle, any rain there fairly light. Picks up a little bit as you head down the 5, down through Salem and Eugene and down toward the Medford vicinity, and you cross over Sexton Summit and you get down into the northern Sacramento Valley, and the rain really does start to pick up, particularly up around Eureka. There's some thunder and lightning embedded in there too. Then a break, just a few showers around San Francisco. You had your steadier band of rain move through earlier in the day. That band has now moved a little bit farther south, but fortunately, at least for Southern California, appears to be breaking up just a little bit before it rounds Point Conception and heads on into the Santa Ynez Mountains and Santa Barbara and the Ventura area, as well as LA. So you will get a little bit of rain as this moves by, but it's not going to be torrential downpours, which is good news, at least for the time being. The rest of the nation, fairly quiet, definitely quieted in the Intermountain West. Kristina and Tom talked about all the messy weather here in the south central parts of the nation, and along the eastern seaboard you enjoyed a fairly nice day as well, particularly here from Miami all the way up to Charleston, through Hatteras and the Outer Banks up to New York and Boston. High pressure really dominated. Some pretty nice weather even as far west as Atlanta. This is all rain for the most part, although I did notice that on up toward Wausau there was a little bit of wet snow, and and maybe back into northern Iowa toward Mason City, but the vast majority of what you're looking at here is actually rain, which is kind of unusual to say the least at this time of the year. Let's go ahead and talk about our forecast quickly. The Northeast should have a pretty nice day, but some rain will start to show up in Pittsburgh late in the morning, we think, and definitely back toward Cleveland and Cincinnati. Heavy showers and thunderstorms rumbling across the south, some of those severe tonight, moving through Birmingham, maybe getting into Atlanta for the morning rush hour. Yow, we don't want that. 66 for a low in Miami, should be drying out, but a little breezy in Houston, New Orleans, and Dallas. Some rain up around Chicago, maybe a little bit of wet snow on the northwest fringe of this precipitation. Should not cause any major travel problems. More wet weather for the Pacific Northwest, but a bit of a break for San Francisco and definitely into LA. There's a look at your overnight lows. And here's our forecast. Again, we'll watch this low pressure area start to move to the north. A little bit of wet snow maybe up toward Milwaukee and Madison and northern Michigan. The rest of this is rain. And some of these thunderstorms in the southeast could be locally very, very heavy. Well, there's more wet weather on tap for the west coast and, of course, our severe weather over the south. What does that have to do with El Nino? Let's go back to Kristina and Tom for a little bit of an update on this.
All right, thanks a lot, Jeff. And again, joined by senior meteorologist Tom Moore. We are going to take a look at how this system may be related to El Nino, but first a look at some of the rough weather that we've seen as a result of this storm. Hail was piling up like snow along the roads around Devine, Texas today. This area is just southwest of San Antonio. As the storm passed through the region, it brought heavy rain, high winds, and hail. As you can see, everything from road signs to cars to power lines were toppled, leaving residents to clean up quite a mess. And Tom, of course, El Nino, a popular topic these days. How does the storminess along the Gulf Coast, how is this related to El Nino?
Well, El Nino energizes the atmosphere because anytime you heat up the water the way it is in the eastern Pacific, you're injecting heat and moisture into the lower levels of the atmosphere, and that's invigorating our subtropical jet stream. We'll go to that and we'll show you that it comes out of the eastern Pacific across Mexico and across the Gulf of Mexico. And it's been like that for a while, and then when we get these storm systems coming on down out of California, reforming east of the Rockies, moving along the Gulf Coast, we have a lot of lifting in the atmosphere because of this jet stream that lifts the heat and moisture and produces even more rain. So it doesn't create the storm so much, but it does seem to guide them. It limits the cold air that can come into them, so it keeps them rain, but it makes the rain more prolific and usually results in heavy rainfall from Texas to Florida in El Nino years, and we're seeing that this year. And really, as we look down the road, this pattern doesn't look like it's going to change. And in other strong El Nino years, we've had storms coming across the Gulf all the way through March and even into April. So this pattern could continue.
Okay, Tom, thanks a lot for your insight. Well, we've got a lot of severe weather tonight. Is that going to affect your morning commute? Find out.
It's out there waiting. And in all our years of experience, we've learned one thing. You're not the only one who depends on good brakes. With upfront pricing at Midas, we first perform a 45-point inspection to find what repairs are needed and what can wait, so you only pay what we quote you. Come into Midas today, because you never know what you might run into next.
This is your local forecast. Weather information you can plan on, only on the Weather Channel.
been getting those phone stickers, you may be getting a little confused. So allow me to simplify.
I love stickers.
Okay, but if you're calling anywhere in America or anywhere around the world, most calls from home will cost you less with AT&T One Rate and One Rate